live.
I said, Brian, that's a movie. That's a Disney movie. And he goes, well, will you ask the pastor tomorrow? I'm like,
Yes,
so
let's
that's my
have
question. He's waiting
let's-
at home for your answer.
let's have this discussion yet
Yeah,
again.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A long-haired chihuahua. He's a cute. He is a cute.
19 years.
That's a long.
It is a long
Long
time for a
time,
dog.
So the only creatures that have souls are humans.
Because you have to believe, you have to believe in Jesus Christ to
Right.
get to heaven, and they can't get.
Right, they don't have
can't
souls.
believe that.
So the good news is they don't go to hell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even the nastiest dog you ever owned,
Yeah.
it doesn't go to hell.
Yeah.
But they also don't go to heaven.
Heaven.
No.
Okay.
Now that's not to say there aren't animals in heaven, because the Bible talks about like Elijah is taken to heaven in a chariot, fiery chariot with horses.
Okay.
In Jonah, God talks about his concern for the animals in Nineveh as well as the people. The Garden of Eden certainly had
Yeah.
all kinds of animals, and Adam named them all. So we would not say that we're not going to have animals in paradise, but not necessarily the same animals we had, which may be good news or bad news depending on whether you like the animal or not.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the dogs I've had over the years, I would really love to have in heaven. There's also several that I would really be disappointed if they showed up in heaven, because I was glad to see them go. So no, it's not the same dog, but and you won't be sad because you're not going to be sad about anything in heaven. So
Okay.
yeah.
So I was,
Right.
okay, so I was right. I mean, I told him. I said,
Right.
and he goes, well, what about the ark? God saved all those animals. Didn't they go to heaven? That's what he said.
That was in,
They
that was in
needed to be-
paradise. though.
Yeah.
They have
Definitely not
animals.
paradise.
Right. They had to have animals on the ark.
Just-
To repopulate the
earth.
earth.
That's what I told him. I said, that has nothing
Yeah.
to do with heaven. That had to do with God's
there's
condemnation.
no
Although
way-
he is correct that then in the New Testament they picked the idea of salvation through water in the ark, physical salvation. They pick that up and apply it to spiritual salvation through baptism. So that you do see that in Titus and in 1 Peter and elsewhere, where even Jesus talks about the ark
Okay.
and makes the connection between the ark and baptism.
That's why the Gothic churches like this are built like a boat.
Right, upside down boat.
Oh, it does kind of
Interesting.
look like a boat.
Yeah, Pastor pointed it out a couple years ago, I think.
Every now and then I'll bring it up.
Yeah,
Bring it up,
Yeah.
I had never thought of it.
Well, and the part that you sit in is called, not if you're a Saturday nighter, it doesn't work quite as well. But the part that you sit in on Sunday morning is called the nave, which is from Latin navis, ship. Yeah, that's why it's called the nave. Yeah, yeah. There's three parts to the place where we worship. The nave is where the people sit. The chancel is the place where the sermon is preached and the readings are read. And the sanctuary is actually only where the altar is. And so you'll see the steps divided. In our church, it's not like if you go to Holy Names downtown, you see it really clearly because they have a giant chancel and the choir sits there and the priests all sit there. And then they have that one big block right in the middle where the altar is. That's clearly the sanctuary. That's a whole separate thing.
Is that
But-
the Catholic church?
Yeah, Holy Names downtown is a great for that kind of architecture.
Where is that? Because I used to go to St. Peter's during my lunch hour. I'm not Catholic, but just because looking
Yeah.
for some spiritual something.
Right.
So where is this Holy Name?
Oh.
St.
It's in the loop.
Yeah.
I can't think of the
It's
street
on
right
Mad-
now.
No,
Madison is where
Rosie
St. I know,
somewhere else.
Madison is St. Peter's. Madison
it's
and
very
Clark.
close.
It's on
to-
North and South Street. It faces west, and it's on the east side of the street. I know that.
Yeah, I think it's almost across from the First Chicago Bank building.
Chase.
No, Chase.
Chase. This is St. Peter's.
Chase.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah, but
about.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm thinking the one on Madison.
Is St. Peter's.
I-
Why don't
I
we just
saw it
Big
passing.
look it
marble
up?
block.
The pretty,
Yeah,
It
pretty
is
looking.
beautiful. You go in there and it's
I've never went
Oh,
there.
so that's
Yeah.
St. Peter's, the one across
Yeah.
the
St. Peter's. Right. It's right. It's on Madison.
That's
and
the only
Clark.
one I went into. I
Holy
don't
Names
know
is on
about-
State Street,
Let's see.
Oh.
735 North State.
I know it was
Oh,
a big,
North Street,
big
okay.
street. I was gonna say Main, but there's
Yeah.
no Main
That's
Street.
way-
Yeah.
State's just their main
That's
street.
It is, yeah.
That is definitely over the river.
Yeah, so it's State just south of Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not-
Yeah, another one is if you ever get to New York City to see St. Pat's.
I've been in St.
Yeah, it's
Pat's.
another one
Yeah.
that really you can see that nave chancel, sanctuary
Separate,
really
yeah.
clearly. In our church, the architecture isn't as clear, but we do have the steps up. So you have two steps up to the chancel, which is where other stuff goes on. mean, it's where the choir would be if we had a big enough chancel. It's where the pastors and the lay assistants would sit if we had a big enough chancel. Obviously, we can't get enough seats in there. And then the next step up is the sanctuary, which is why we took the chairs, and you don't remember this because you weren't here yet, but we used to have the chairs for the pastors and lay assistants up in the sanctuary when I got here, and I took them out because I wanted to distinguish architecturally the sanctuary from the rest of the church. That's for us the Holy of Holies, where Jesus' body and blood are. And so we don't do anything up there except things that are related somehow to the Lord's Supper. So like even at funerals, you'll see that I don't go behind the altar. I go to the altar, and I really do that mostly because that's where the microphone is. You know, so if I want to pray towards the altar, I have to go close enough to where my voice picks up on the microphone. Otherwise, I wouldn't even go up there for funerals or weddings or anything like that.
So I was told that churches, actually someone at this church told me this church is shaped like a cross.
Mhm.
Is that
Except
true?
we're missing a bar.
Yeah.
Arm, right?
They didn't have enough money.
Oh, then, okay.
Yeah, they didn't have enough money to build both transepts.
Transepts, yeah.
Nope. That is the reality of life, is that
Okay.
they built one transept and didn't have enough money to build the other
It takes
one.
money. That's why everyone says, oh, they're about money. It's like, stuff takes money.
Yep.
Like, that is the nature of, that's just the nature of it. Like, you gotta if there's no money, it ain't happening.
Like to replace our stained glass
Ugh.
in today's dollars would be $1 million.
I hope you have pictures of each thing, each.
Yeah, and we have them heavily insured.
I
Yeah.
bet you do.
And we have, and the, to replace the pipe organ would be close to $1 million.
Yeah, that
Oh,
thing
yeah.
is, that thing is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
It's
just, I
not
mean,
that, it's
things
not
cost
that
money.
old, right? It got
Oh,
replaced.
yeah, it's
didn't it?
40 years in 19,
Yeah.
Oh,
let me think now, 1982
oh.
is when it's
Oh.
from, yeah.
I'm
40
the one
years.
that's old.
Yeah.
How much were the bells because when, for the bell
To
choir-
refurbish the bells?
To refurbish, you said they're really expensive. and, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot to
What
those
was
bells.
that?
Well, for 14,000, wasn't it? Something like that?
Something, yeah, something like.
It was multiple thousands of
Yeah, it
dollars
was
to have them
substantial.
refurbished.
Whoa.
Maybe it was 7,000 or 8,000.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
I'm
can't
thinking maybe too
remember.
high. I think I think it was like 8,000. Yeah.
I don't know.
Bells, we have bells?
The
Mark.
handbells.
What?
Handbells.
Handbells.
Oh,
Handbells. Not the.
On the 9th, I'm gonna be playing a duo with the organist on the bells.
Yeah.
That's, she
Yeah.
texted me the
Very
other day, and
cool.
I go, super cool. And she's like, because of my hand, she's like, can you play 2 bells? And I'm like, yes, I'm ready. So, well, I mean, I was waiting today for a text to see the first practice, because it's 2.5 weeks away. We need to be on it. But I didn't hear anything, so I'll give her till tomorrow, and that'll bother her.
Okay, so we are in the middle of Ehud, Judges 2, and we stopped at verse 11.
There's a former prime minister of Israel is named Ehud.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly common
Yeah,
Hebrew
It
name.
would be, I would imagine,
And Dr. Billadou is working on OB tonight, so we may or may not hear from her, depending on whether anyone's in labor.
yeah. Yeah.
You
Oh,
say
exci-
Judges 2?
How
2:11,
how
yeah.
exciting then tonight for her.
Yeah, she hates OB.
How could that be?
Hates OB.
Oh,
Yeah, it's kind of boring for anesthesiologists
yeah.
because you
I guess.
basically go put in the epidural and you go
Yeah.
sit around and wait. And you
Yeah,
check the
like
epidural, sit around and
yeah.
wait. Yeah. She likes the OR. That's her bread and butter is the OR.
When did Dr. Boudreau have this?
Yesterday he had Dr. Boudreau had an aortic valve replacement yesterday.
I just saw him Sunday.
And he's-
They were.
No, he was not making it public.
He
You'll
wasn't-
notice in the prayers that the prayers were generically for people who are having surgery.
You did say that, yeah. They-
Yeah, he
they
didn't
normally
want
don't say that.
he didn't want a big to do.
Okay, you knew about it
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Oh yeah. But he he did quite well, and he should. The only pain he has is because of the sternum. It had to be open heart.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can do that through the groin,
Yeah.
but they couldn't do
Yeah,
his because it was so
angioplasty.
calcified. And like that, yeah. But they couldn't do it because it was too calcified, so they had to
I want
replace
to
it.
tell you, the pain that I had when I had mine was just absolutely horrendous, the recovery pain.
Wow.
I had to be in that Mary Ann Joy place,
Mm-hmm.
and just to get up and walk a few feet was excruciating.
Mm-hmm.
Aortic valve.
That's the biggest valve, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same thing, it was calcified, and
How do you
I,
get calcified? Just bad food or?
No,
No.
it's congenital for me.
Yeah, it's genetic mostly.
Oh, okay.
Because if you knew Dr. Boudreaux and you know the way that guy
Yeah.
lives,
Yeah,
it's not.
it wouldn't be his lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
it's just genetic. Some people have.
Yeah, more
Yeah.
calcium in their body than others do.
Yeah, and everybody has something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, sure.
everybody has something.
That's why you have gallstones and kidney
yeah.
stones and all that.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, judges, what?
In my family, we have marvelous hairlines and fantastic eyes.
Oh, good.
Judges 2:11. Israel's unfaithfulness. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. You know, those are the gods of the Canaanites. And they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went after other gods from among the gods of the peoples who were around them, the Canaanites primarily, and bowed down to them. And they provoked the Lord to anger. They abandoned the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth, which is the Asherah is the wife of Baal. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them. And he sold them into the hands of their surrounding enemies, so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them for harm, as the Lord had warned, and as the Lord had sworn to them, and they were in terrible distress. So here we understand the cycle of the people of Israel, which continues even today.
sounds a lot like
Yep.
today.
Israel strays, Israel fails, Israel cries out, God responds. And that's what you're going to see all through the book of Judges. And it's what you still see today, right? People don't listen. God is so clear in his word. This is what I expect. Okay? Here's what I expect. And what do the 10 Commandments get you? The 10 Commandments do not get you salvation. You know, the 10 Commandments get you a peaceful life on earth. God says, follow the commandments. You're going to please me. You're going to have a better life. Everything's going to be great for you. Don't follow the commandments, and you're going to have a hard time. Not that you're going to be damned. He doesn't damn people who break the commandments. If he did, we'd all be damned. Right? But you're going to have a harder time. Some of it is just natural consequences. That God is a genius at allowing us to suffer natural consequences. Something that I wish I could teach every parent, to stop running ahead of their children and preventing their consequences. Because if you prevent natural consequences, it doesn't do that person any good. That's how we learn, is through natural consequences. You know, and so that's what God does, is God stands back and says, all right, go ahead. You know, do what you want and find out what it's going to be like. So what happened, we see in Israel. Every single time, this is what we're going to see with every single judge. If we were studying the whole book of Judges, which we'll do one more judge after this, but if we were studying the whole book of Judges, all through 1st and 2nd Kings, all through 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you see all through the prophets, you see the same thing. They go off, they worship other gods. Okay, so most of the time for us, I don't think anyone in this congregation is tempted to worship Baal or Asherah. You know, that's not what we deal with. And that sometimes people get the idea that, well, okay, so what? Baal, Asherah, we're not, you know, we don't have little gods in our house. We're not, you know, this is not,
The Hindus do.
this doesn't, well, yeah, but this doesn't apply to us. Oh, yeah, it does. Because everybody has gods. Okay, everybody has gods. I don't know what your gods are. You know what my gods are. But we all have temptations to follow something, because anything that you put above God is an idol. Okay, that's what the first commandment. That's why it starts out with the first commandment: love the Lord God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. Okay, that's what the first commandment wants you to do. Okay, have no, not some, not a few, not too many, no other gods. Soon as you put anything whatsoever above God, you've got a god. You've got an idol. Okay? And so back then, Asherah and Baal, and then you had Marduk and Tiamat and all these other ones from the Hittites and the Azarites, and they all had their own gods. You know, then you get to the New Testament, you get Zeus, and Jupiter and Hera and
Hercules?
yeah, well, Hercules is a demigod, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you get all those, and human beings still make up gods all the time. You know, they just make them up. Read over some of the stuff about Mormonism.
Yeah.
LDS is just, I mean, it's just, or what's the other one that the science fiction writer created?
Oh my gosh, L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah.
Scientology.
Scientology.
Yeah.
What are their gods? What is Scientology? I've never.
He was a science fiction writer who thought it would be fun to create a religion, and people started following
The
it.
sheep of
It's
America
horrible.
followers.
It's just horrible.
Yeah, and so
What's the basis of that?
of Scientology,
Yeah.
that you are your own god, essentially. You know, that you need to lift yourself up and raise yourself up to self-actualization and become your own god. Have you ever read Maslow, the hierarchy of needs? Yeah, Maslow has this hierarchy of needs. He's a psychologist. Psychologist? Yeah, psychologist. And he wrote lots of books, and he was very famous. But essentially, the most developed human being is the person who realizes that they are the top. Yeah, that they are the pinnacle.
Self-actualization.
And that's called
That's like the
self-actualization.
exact opposite of what Jesus said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Isn't that interesting that a human religion always ends up worshiping the human somehow? Yeah, one way or another, a human religion always gets man up there on top, which is why Gerhard Bodie wrote a book that I just love, and which escapes me right this minute. But he talks about the fall into sin was not a fall down, but a fall up, because the human for God, they were trying to replace God, and that's why it was a fall up. And he continues on that, and all of our sinfulness is still a fall up, because we're always trying to knock God off the top and take his spot. You know, we're falling up, not falling down. Okay. All right. So what we've got Israel at the end of chapter 2. They are worshiping Baal and Asherah, and God has warned them not to, and they were in terrible distress. Well, what a shock. Then, verse 16, then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. I love the whored after other gods, because whoring is a wonderful word.
I know you really like that word.
It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite words in theology, because it so accurately describes what human beings do. We have this wonderful God, and I mean, think about two human beings who are in a wonderful marriage. Everything's fantastic. They love each other. They have a wonderful life. They have wonderful children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And one of them goes off and sees a prostitute. Okay, he goes whoring after a prostitute. And everybody's going to say, come on, what more do you want in life?
Yep.
You know, how ridiculous of you to risk everything that you have in order to go and have sex with a prostitute.
I knew somebody I worked with, and that's what he would do. He would go to I forgot what he called it, but these were prostitutes that they shipped in from Venezuela, like 17-year-old
Oh, that's
girls,
so sad.
16-year-old girls.
Sex trade, yeah.
Yeah,
sex trade.
and he got his wife caught a venereal disease that killed her.
Yeah.
From-
What?
Wow.
Yes.
Natural
Yeah, his wife
consequences.
Yeah, there you go.
he gave his wife
The
venereal
disease,
disease,
yeah.
and it killed her. Killed his wife.
So that's such a great example of what people do with God all the time. We have this phenomenal God who has sent his son to die on a cross for us, who raised him from the dead, who has made us his children, who has said, I'm going to carry you in the palm of my hand until I bring you into paradise with me. And why would we ever go worship a different God? Why would we ever put anything over that God? Why would we ever think that anything is more important than that God? And yet, people go whoring, you know, that's why it's my favorite word in the Bible. to
And
describe
because we are-
What's
adultery.
your pastor's favorite word of the Bible?
Whoring.
We are the bride, we are the
What
bride
church
of
is
Christ.
that?
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
are the
God
bride of
loves
Christ.
us
Right.
that much is that we are the bride of Christ, those who make it to heaven. And when you go and sin,
You're whoring.
Yeah,
Okay, they soon turned aside from the way in which their fathers had walked, who had obeyed the commandments of the Lord, and they did not do so, and they did not do so. Okay, so pay attention to that, because when human beings decide to go a whoring, they need to remember affecting themselves. Okay, they're affecting the people behind them. Their children, their grandchildren, their nieces, their nephews, their brothers, their sisters, all of those people who are behind them. I remind kids in the youth group all the time who are irritated with their younger siblings to remember that those younger siblings are modeling themselves after them. Okay, that they are, whether they want to be or not. No one asks them if they wanted to be. Doesn't matter.
that is so true.
You are the model.
That's absolutely, my cousins in California, 7 kids. And I want to tell you, when I was out there twice, it was paradise where they lived, in Agora. And it was absolute paradise in 1974. Something happened to their parents. And the father left the house. And everything just went to hell
Right.
for those poor kids.
Right.
Just went to hell.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
there's story
it was
after
just-
story after story like
It
that.
was just paradise. I mean, it was the greatest time of my life when I spent the summer with those guys in '74.
So God is so clear here. This is not the only place. Deuteronomy also talks about teach these commandments to your children and to their children's children. Okay, because it has to work that way. When one person goes off the rails, they're taking the whole train with them. Okay, there is no such thing as doing your own thing.
Yeah.
You just do you, boo. I just want to smack any person who ever says that.
Like, whatever makes you happy. It's
Yeah,
that's
whatever,
the dumbest
yeah.
advice I've ever heard in
Oh,
my
yeah.
life.
Whatever makes you happy. Right, you're taking the whole train off the rails here because you want to go a whoring.
Yeah.
Whenever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with from the hand of their enemies for all the days of the judge. For the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning because of those who afflicted and oppressed them. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he said, because this people has transgressed my covenant, and I commanded their fathers, and have not obeyed my voice out before them any of the nations that Joshua, in order to test Israel by them, whether they will take care to walk in the way of the Lord as their fathers did or not. So the Lord left those nations, not driving them out quickly, and he did not give them into the hand of Joshua. So essentially what God says is, if you want to go a whoring, you can have your whore. Okay? And I'll stand back. And let's see how you like it. And every time it turns out horrible. You read the Bible, and that's there's 3 uses of the law. There's the curb, the mirror, and the rule, right? The curb stops you from blatant sin. The mirror shows you that you are sinful, in case you didn't know. And the rule tells you this is how to live. Okay, so that you can please God, but so that you can also have a good life. Okay, and so if you choose not to follow the law, that's where you're going to suffer. Is the rule, because God says, "Look, I created the universe. I've set it in motion. I've told you how it works." Okay, so if you don't want to follow that, okay, there's chatter going on in the, but it's nothing important. It's not questions. It's just people chatting back and forth. If you don't want to follow that, that's your business. Okay, chapter 3. So that's where we're at the point where they have fallen into the hands of their enemies because they're off a whoring. Now, These are the nations that the Lord left to test Israel by them. That is, all Israel who had not experienced all the wars in Canaan. It was only in order that the generation of people of Israel might know war to teach war to those who had not known it before. These are the nations: the 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites, and the Sidonians, and the Hivites, who lived in Mount Lebanon, and Mount Baal Hermon, as far as Hamath. They were for the testing of Israel, to know whether Israel would obey the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses. So the people of Israel lived among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and their daughters they took to themselves for wives, and their own daughters they gave to their sons, and they served their gods. Okay, Othniel and the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Every time you see that phrase in the Bible, we're talking about the same thing. Every time. Worshipping other gods. Did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Okay? So let's look at Luther, just for fun. This is from the American Edition, volume 44. This Luther says, let's see. Now look, what man on earth would not have enough to do all his life in performing this work, honoring God? For who lives an hour without trials? I will make no mention of the trials of adversity, which are countless. The most dangerous trial of all is when there is no trial, when everything is all right and running smoothly. That is when a man tends to forget God, to become too independent, and put his time of prosperity to a wrong use. In fact, at this time, he has 10 times more need to call upon God's name than in adversity. As it is written in Psalm 91:7, 1,000 fall at your side, 10,000 at your right side. And so we see as clear as daylight that worse sin and vice occur in the everyday experience of all men when there is peace, when everything is going well and times are good. Then war, pestilence, illness, and all manner of misfortune that burden us. Moses, too, is anxious about his people, lest they forsake the slightest ground of God's commandment, for no other reason than that they are too full, too well provided for, and had ease for too long. When he says in Deuteronomy 32:15, my beloved people has become too rich, full, and fat. Therefore have they resisted their God. As it is written in Judges 3:1-11, which is where we're reading, God allowed many of their enemies to remain and would not drive them out, so that they should not have peace and would have to discipline themselves by keeping God's commandments. He deals with us in the same way to our lives. Indeed, so mindful of us is he that he teaches and compels us to honor and call upon his name, to gain confidence and faith in him, and so fulfill the first 2 commandments. In this respect, foolish men run into danger, and especially the works righteous saints and those who want to be somebody special. They teach men to cross themselves. One arms himself with letters, another runs to the fortune teller. One seeks this, another that, all in order to escape misfortune and be secure. It is beyond telling what devilish spirit is behind this, playing with sorcery, magic, and superstition. All of this happens only because it is God's name they do not heed, and in which they do not put their trust. Here the name of God and the first 2 commandments are greatly dishonored when men look to the devil, to man, or to creatures, for that which should be sought and found in God alone through a pure faith and simple confidence, in cheerful meditation and calling on holy name. Boy, is that the case. Mm-hmm. The easier life is, the more we go wandering.
Yeah. No way.
Let's see. Okay. Nope. That's. I've told the story many times of the friend I had that had a church in downtown Brooklyn. Very, very, very poor church. And he came to visit me when I was serving the wealthiest congregation I ever served. And he told me, he says, man, he says, I don't envy you at all. And I said, what are you talking about? Now, look at this place. This place is a, you know, I mean, we have this phenomenal organ, we have this phenomenal sanctuary, we have this phenomenal school, we have everything. He says, yeah. He says, you know, he says, when I'm in the pulpit on Sunday mornings, my people need Jesus. He says, your people don't. He said, they don't think they do anyway. And I thought about that, and he was absolutely right. And that's what made that church so challenging. I hadn't, before he said that to me, I hadn't put my finger on why that church was so hard. It was a difficult ministry, and I couldn't quite put my hands on it. And then he said that to me. I said, oh, that's why. Because it's hard to tell people about Jesus when they don't see a need for Jesus. When life is so easy for them that they, you know, Jesus is a nice side issue, you know, but he's not necessary.
Is that church still difficult, I wonder?
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know. I haven't
Where
been
was
there.
it at?
I would not say that.
Oh, you know, just what state? I don't know. I was just, was it like a different
It's
state?
state of confusion. Yeah. Mhm.
A different
Different
state,
state.
okay.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Danya says, does God judge men different from women? No. No. Most of the time in the Bible, when you see men, people, like in the Greek word is anthropoi, and its literal translation is men, but really it's mankind, people.
That had to be
Yeah.
where the word anthropology came from then.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
The study
Yep.
of the evolution of civilization.
that's
Right.
what's so great
Right.
about the Greek
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
You can almost read it.
Let's see.
There's a lot of words that, you
Where
know,
am I?
That,
carry over.
That's 7.
yeah.
Okay, 7.
Okay.
What happens?
7 what?
Okay, 3:7. And the people of God of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and Asherah. Therefore, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he sold them. Now, who sold who? He sold them. God sold them into the hand of Cushan Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia.
Ooh.
And the people of Israel served Cushan Rishathaim 8 years. But when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord raised up a deliverer for Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him, and he judged Israel. He went out to war, and the Lord gave Cushan Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed over Cushan Rishathaim. So the land had rest 40 years. Then Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. So, this is the first chance, you know, they have. They cry out to God. God gives them Othniel. Othniel has victory over the Mesopotamian king, and they have peace for 40 years. Okay? And then what do you think happens?
They go back into their usual ways.
By the Lord.
You know, it reminds me of, you know, when I was in the parish in 2001, and the towers got hit.
Yeah,
Boy, you should have
seen
seen
the
people
people,
flock
yeah.
into church.
Yeah.
Sure.
yeah,
All of a sudden, our attendance shot through the roof,
yeah.
and people who we hadn't seen for years were in the pews on Sunday, and it lasted about 8 months, 6 to 8 months. And then it was all gone. Everyone left again. Like, oh, okay, no, we don't need God anymore. You know, we thought we were going to need him, and it turns out we don't, because people just get distracted. They, you know, forget
Especially
about
if
God.
you're rich. How hard is it for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God?
Right, and that's the very problem, is that the reason the rich man has the reason is because it's the more money you have, the easier it is to trust money. That's just the way it is. I mean, in this world, the way we live in this world, money buys you everything. You know,
Happiness.
except happiness, right? A lot of people never figure that out, though.
No.
It's amazing that how many people don't get it.
In my Women in the Bible book, I was reading the other night, I was reading Miriam and Hannah, I think, the story of that. And the woman who wrote the book said people don't realize that like one of the meanings in life, or one of the great things in life is not through accomplishments, it's through human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that really hit home, because it's like I've been happier lately, and I've been really having good relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it has to do with coming here,
Right.
to be honest with you.
Sure. Yeah, that's the thing that so many people struggle with, is they don't understand the purpose of church. They think of church as a club. And, if you like religious clubs, it's fine. If you don't like religious clubs, that's fine too. Maybe there's a kayaking club you'd like, or a hiking club, or, stamp collecting club or something. Everybody just find whatever club you like. But that's not the church. The church is the place where you go get fed so that you become stronger spiritually, and you're able to build those relationships. Because it's only through spiritual strength that you can really build real relationships. Now, you can build fake relationships all day long. I understand that. But to build a real, loving relationship with people, you have to be fed yourself. Because you got nothing to give if you're not fed. Okay? So if you don't read the Word, stay involved in the Word, receive the sacrament, if you treat the Bible like one person said, when the child said to the mother, "Why didn't we go to Sunday school? Why didn't we go to church when we were young?" And the mother said, "There was a Bible sitting on the coffee table your whole life." Yeah, it really doesn't work by osmosis. You can't sleep with it under your pillow, and you have to actually open it and read it. It's phenomenal to me, though, over and over and over again, how many times I've asked God a question, opened the Bible, and He's answered me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will be totally transparent and tell you, He does not always answer me the way I wanted Him to. Okay, that
Sometimes he scares you too.
yeah, sometimes the answer is a little shocking. Sometimes He picks up on something that you weren't asking. Like, no. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about this. And God said, we're going to talk about that in order to talk about this. That's the way He works.
And He shows you the future through the Word of God. I mean, for your life, He can do that too. He's done it to me.
He can direct you. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really show you the future, because no one knows the future except Him. But He pushes you.
And He
But He pushes you.
shows you.
He gives you a shove in the right direction.
Does God know your future? You're saying
Oh,
Of
yes.
course, God.
Yeah.
God
Oh,
knows
yes.
everything.
Oh, no, God knows everything.
Oh, yes.
No. We don't know the future.
Yeah.
So the reason you have to be cautious about that is because there are some Christians who will say, because they are so deeply faithful and committed, they can tell you the future. No. Only God knows the future.
And He uses sickness to teach us.
Oh, He uses all kinds of adversity.
Yeah.
And
Sickness, poverty,
all these
brokenness,
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
things. Everything.
If you keep going back to God and saying, like what I tell people all the time when they ask me why me, is why not you?
Mm-hmm.
Don't ask why me. Ask, what are you showing me? What are you teaching me? And you may or may not like the answer, but at least it's an answer. What are you teaching me, Lord? Open the Word, read.
Like those helicopter parents you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because He allows all these things to teach us. And if we gotta say, Thy will be done. Because it's not always God's will that so-and-so gets healed or their
Right.
life becomes better. God is having His way with everybody.
Yeah. And sometimes when someone's not healed, that's a blessing for them. Because they might be facing some really difficult things, and God allows them to come to paradise. I mean, it's not always about us.
No.
Yeah, I understand. We get left behind. We're the last rats on the ship. Nobody likes being the rat on the ship. I understand that, but it's not. Don't say, how could God do this to me? It's not about you. It's not about you. It's about something else, and God's giving you something and teaching you something. You just got to figure it out.
Yep.
And He is not a God that spoon feeds. which is really hard for people today because we have a generation right now who loves to be spoon-fed. Everything. They want to be spoon-fed everything. They don't want to have to figure out anything. And if you tell them to figure it out for themselves, sometimes they just throw their hands up and say, yeah, I'm done.
You know, I
It's too
find
hard.
theology just is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
So hard. It's the hardest thing.
Yep.
It's horrible.
Sarah will tell you it's because it's squishy.
Yeah.
Squishy science is hard. Okay, where was I? Ehud.
Ehud.
Verse 12. Let's see. God's misbehaving people. Oh, he sells them into slavery. If you fail to follow God's law, he does not always directly intervene. Sometimes he allows you to re-enter the slavery from which he has delivered you. Remember that's the metaphor of being delivered from slavery works all the way through the Bible. Is that just as the people of Israel were delivered from Egypt, so Jesus delivered us from sin. So that works all the way through the Bible, the metaphor of slavery. Slavery is a lesson that God uses. It's a teacher that God uses to say, you don't like being enslaved to the king of Mesopotamia? Don't be enslaved to sin. Okay? The people cry out, God and Othniel raised up. God and Othniel is raised up from and delivers God people. They have peace for 40 years. Okay, then on to Ehud. And the people of Israel again, what a shock, again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Israel, because they had done what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He gathered to himself the Ammonites and the Amalekites, and went and defeated Israel. And they took possession of the city of palms, Jerusalem, and Jericho. And the people of Israel served Eglon, the king of Moab, 18 years. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and the Lord raised up for them a deliverer, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjaminite, a left-handed man. Interesting, that becomes important. The people of Israel sent tribute by him to Eglon, the king of Moab, and Ehud made for himself a sword with 2 edges, a cubit in length, which is usually the length of your from your fingertip to your elbow. That's what a cubit is. It's around 18 inches. He bound it on his right thigh under his clothes, and he presented the tribute to Eglon, the king of Moab. Now, Eglon was a very fat man, and when Ehud had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who carried the tribute. But he himself turned back at the idols near Gilgal and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. And he commanded silence. And all his attendants went out from his presence. And Ehud came to him as he was sitting alone in his cool roof chamber. And Ehud said, I have a message from God for you. And he arose from his seat. And Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and thrust it into his belly. And the hilt also went in after the blade, and the fat closed over the blade, for he did not pull the sword out of his belly, and dung came out, severed the intestine. Then Ehud went out into the porch and closed the doors of the roof chamber behind him and locked them. When he had gone, the servants came, and when they saw that the doors of the roof chamber were locked, they thought, surely he's relieving himself in the closet of the cool chamber. And they waited till they were embarrassed. But when he did not open the doors of the roof chamber, they took the key and opened them, and there lay their lord dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while they delayed, and he passed beyond the idols and escaped to Sarah. When he arrived, he sounded the trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim. Then the people of Israel went down with him from the hill country, and he was their leader. And he said to them, follow after me, for the Lord has given your enemies, the Moabites, into your hand. So they went down after him and seized the fords of the Jordan against the Moabites, and did not allow anyone to pass over, and they killed at that time about 10,000 of the Moabites, all strong, able-bodied men. Not a man escaped. So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest for 80 years.
Double
All right.
the previous.
Yeah, double the previous. So the people did the evil again.
And they killed all, is that the end of Moab? Moab
No,
shows up
because
later
after
on.
the book of Ruth, Ruth marries
A Moabite.
Moabite.
Yeah,
Oh,
Ruth's a
they
Moabite.
still
They
exist.
go to
Yeah.
Moab.
Okay, so they did evil again, which is always idolatry of some ilk, right? Eglon, king of the Moabites, was descended from Lot's incestuous relationship with his daughter. Okay, remember that. He gathered the Ammonites, who were descended from Lot's other daughter, also impregnated by Lot, and gathered the Amalekites, descended from Esau, which is another problem child. Okay, so it's interesting here that the people who they're fighting are all results of people who have not listened to the Lord. Okay, it doesn't end. What's going on right now in that part of the world? Ishmael and
Yeah.
Isaac are still fighting.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that
Yeah.
crazy? I was talking to my mother-in-law today. I was saying, it's this whole. I mean, the strife in the world is all because two women couldn't get along.
Hmm.
Like,
Right.
and again, I'm like, isn't that typical? Put the blame on women. From the very beginning of the
Well,
Genesis.
I would go back a little further and say it was Abraham couldn't keep his pants zipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, he wanted. I mean, Sarah sent Hagar
Sarah
in.
offered
She
Hagar
wanted him.
to him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's just then, but the one Sarah got what she wanted, then
Yeah.
she threw Hagar to the side. And
Okay.
it's like, I think it's all women. Like,
tell
it's,
me any wife in this world that comes to her husband and says, "I think you should sleep with my maid."
Yeah.
He's an idiot if he does that.
Yeah.
He's
True,
an idiot.
true.
True.
Idiot.
True.
True.
And God had promised him.
Yeah.
God had
And
promised
her.
him, "I'm going to give you a son.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a son." But he
they
wouldn't
didn't-
wait.
No.
He wouldn't wait.
Neither would she.
Well, they had
Well-
waited so long though already. I mean, she was like her 100 or
She was
something.
90.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 100.
100,
Gives-
Yeah.
So I
that
mean, that's
gives
a
other
long
people
time to
hope.
wait. And so you think like, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the whole point.
That's the whole point. Exactly. Is that when God says wait, wait.
Right.
Put God to the test. He can make anything happen he wants to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't happen, it shouldn't happen. You know, when God says wait, I'm still waiting for him to give me $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I put my order in a long time ago, you know, and apparently that's not something I should have.
I gave up on that long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you can ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. God says ask.
You literally asked for $1 million. Like,
Oh,
seriously.
When
you
I was a
asked-
kid, yeah.
Okay.
When the
Okay.
lottery first came out
out.
back in the 70s, and I can remember buying a lottery saving my money to buy a lottery ticket, and praying and praying and praying when I don't even know how old I was, but you know, it was when all the lotteries first started.
Yeah.
I was probably 10, you know, and we were very poor, you know, my family, and so I would pray every night to win the lottery, and I wouldn't. And then I would save money until I had enough money to buy a dollar ticket again, and I would go buy another dollar ticket, and I would pray and pray and pray and pray and nothing. And finally, I can't remember if it was who it was. It's probably my pastor. It occurred to you that maybe God doesn't need the state of Arizona to make you a millionaire. If he wants you to be a millionaire, you'll be a millionaire. If he doesn't, you're not gonna.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And then he told me that that statistically, I had the same chance of being struck consecutively in the head with lightning standing outside my front door as to win the lottery. I thought, okay, maybe this is not a good use of my money.
Yeah.
Even though it was only $1. Okay, so consequences. Lot impregnates his daughter in about 2067 BC, and Eglon comes to power in about 1334 BC. So God waited 733 years to level the consequences. You know, 733 years isn't a big deal for God.
Which of the people was the Lot's daughter? Which one? Which one were the Lot's daughters?
Eglon is king of the Moabites.
Okay.
The Moabites are descended from Lot's incestuous relationship with his daughter.
Oh, good.
He gathered the Ammonites to help him, who were descended from Lot's other daughter. Okay, and then he gathered also the Amalekites, who were descended from Esau. So Esau and Jacob, you know, had the little rift. So these are people who did not follow God, and God waited 733 years to level the consequences. So just because you haven't seen any consequences today, don't think you won't. It'll come. You know.
733 years from
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot to
733
Ehud?
years from Lot's incestuous relationship to his daughter to King Eglon of the Moabites. Roughly. I mean, we don't know the exact dates. Those are close dates, though. So just because you don't get blown out of the water for your sins today does not mean that God's overlooking it.
Right.
Don't think that God ignores
He doesn't
it.
overlook anything.
No. Mm-mm. Right. This time they cried out after 18 years of abuse, and God sent Ehud, the left-handed man. It's important because nobody's left-handed. Okay?
In those days.
No. And if you had a crowd who favored their left hand, generally they were trained to use their right hand because left-handed was considered wrong. And so Ehud's left-handed. He straps the sword to his right thigh. Soldiers don't frisk your right thigh because everybody's right-handed will have the sword taped to your left thigh. Okay, so that's how he gets the sword through. There must have been a toilet in the rooftop room where which was not uncommon for them to have these open air kind of screen porch, sleeping porch type things on their roofs, and they often had some kind of toilet in there.
Yeah, I saw a picture of one, a drawing of one on a, and what it was is just like they would have a commode and it would be on the wall, and there would be a tube all the way down into the ground,
Into the ground or actually on the ground?
into the ground.
So they actually had a sewer set.
They would dig a leaching field, is what they would do.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think at this time.
We don't
They
know
did
that,
because
yeah.
it was one of the Roman kings before the empire. I think it's Servius Tullius, I'm pretty sure,
Okay.
was the one that did the big drain. Or maybe not. Maybe it was a guy that started with a D. I don't know. But there were 6 big
Well, I
things.
mean,
And the big Roman drain was like the first major
Sewer system.
Yes, and that's
Right.
that was like that was like 600 BC, I think, around there.
right.
So this could not. This
Yeah,
could
this would have
not
been
be there yet.
1300 BC
Yeah.
roughly.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would have a leaching field basically that you leached your or the other thing they often had was just a chamber pot because you had plenty of servants to come and empty it anytime you wanted. But they had this room where they went to the bathroom and the door's locked because he had locked it on his way out, and they're all sitting there thinking, well, we're not going to bother him when he's on the pot.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, he's sitting there bleeding out. Okay, and he dies. So I mean, I think this is just a classic story. That I think it's a great story that you never hear in they didn't write an arch book about Ehud the left-handed man, stabbing the king and the fat rolls over the sword and his
And
poop
turds
flies
come
out. Yeah, you'll ever hear that. Kids would love that story. And they would love it because things to think about with this story, being different, left-handed, considered weak at that time, may be a gift from God. And that's something that I think kids need to hear.
I'm left-handed.
Yeah. Well, you can't help everything, Yeah, I think kids need to hear that, to embrace their differences, the things that what they may be seeing. And this comes especially for me from raising a kid with special needs, is that, Neil has dyslexia. And, at one time in Neil's school career, we were told by a school principal that he would not be able to fill out an application at 7-Eleven. So, just give up. This kid's useless, And when Neil made petty officer, I told him, I said, put on your dress blues. He was here in the winter, and I said, let's go over and see this guy and say, you know what? You were right. I never could fill out an application at 7-Eleven, but the guy had retired by then, so we never got to play like that. But there's so many kids who I've dealt with over the years who have different ways of learning, different ways of understanding, different ways of seeing, and they're not convenient. Okay, because what's convenient for you as a teacher is if everybody learns the same way. That's convenient. I mean, I've had classes like that over the years where everybody learns the same way, everybody's on the same page. Boy, those are sweet years for the teachers. For me, oh man, this is easy. This is great. I could do this every day. But then that's not the reality, is that you have kids who come along who maybe they have a learning disability, maybe they have ADHD, maybe they have autism, maybe they have whatever it is. Your challenge as a teacher is to figure out, for me, how to communicate the Word of God to these people so they understand that God created them however they were created, and God intends for them to use that somehow. And I've learned that, like autistic kids, they see God in whole different ways than I do. And I've learned so much from autistic kids. about how I see what God is, how big God is, because they see so much more. And from kids with ADHD, I've learned how that some people are kinetic learners, and that's
Kinetic
okay.
learners?
Yeah, that they need to be, and that's okay. I have a whole new appreciation for sports by learning about kinetic learners. That, oh, if we throw a ball around while we're talking about this, or roll a ball around on the table, that can make learning fun, and that can keep these kids engaged. I had one kid had ADHD so bad he would stand up in the middle of class and start
Yeah.
walking around.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I asked him, I said, Michael, I said, one time I said, Michael, do you realize that you're standing up? He goes, oh. And so I went and got a bungee cord, and I put a seatbelt on his chair. And it helped him, because every time he'd start to stand up, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to stand up right now. Yeah, I mean, you figure these things out to help. How do we teach this child who's uniquely gifted? God calls us all to serve him and uniquely gifts us to do whatever he calls us to do. Whatever growing up he did when he was left-handed and he received all kinds of abuse for being left-handed, he did not know what this was for. Why was, but yet he was uniquely gifted to be able to kill Eglon so that God's people could be free. Eglon is criticized for being so fat that the sword was enveloped. Body positivity does not preclude health issues. I think that's an important lesson we learn from this. In this world where we're supposed to have body positivity, and you have these horrendously fat people on TikTok talking about how beautiful they are.
That's sick.
Really? Okay, but look at Eglon.
Okay.
And then the king who opposed God's people ended up lying dead in his own dung. That should give us confidence in serving God, no matter what ungodly rulers might say or do. Okay? We all have to deal with ungodly rulers at some point, sometime, somewhere. I mean, they come and go, but they're always going to be there. This king, think of this. This was the king of the world as far as they were concerned. Okay, Moab was a big nation, and he's laying dead in his own dung because he oppressed God's people.
Has anybody seen Civil War, the movie?
Mm-mm.
I love it. I thought it was the greatest movie.
Good. No, I haven't seen it. All right. Anything else? Questions before we conclude for tonight? Next week we're going to take up Deborah and Balak.
Can you look up something for me, please, before, we could...
Yeah, in a minute. Let me close first. All right, let's close with the blessing. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. Amen. One thing, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to miss again next week because I have to be in Indiana for a meeting. So next Tuesday.
Well, I'll see you then on Wednesday.
So 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we'll take up
I will
Deborah.
be there on Wednesday.
Can you look up...
No, we don't. Yeah,
in the
well, tomorrow I'm
Septuagint,
doing, I switch off weekly reporting.
Isaiah
Yeah,
14,